Ever scrolled through social media and wondered how that guy from high school is posting vacation photos from the Maldives while you're celebrating because your checking account finally hit 4 digits? Or maybe you've heard someone throw around terms like top 1% and wondered if you'd even qualify for the top 90%? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on what it actually means to be rich in America. And I guarantee some of these numbers are going to surprise you. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time analyzing wealth statistics, so you don't have to. If you're curious about where you actually stand on the financial ladder and want to understand what separates the wealthy from everyone else, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up being helpful. Here's something that might blow your mind right off the bat. When most people think about being rich, they imagine private jets, multiple mansions, and enough money to buy a small country. But the reality is that being in the top 10% of Americans by net worth requires far less money than most people think. In fact, you might already be closer than you realize, or you might discover that what you thought was wealthy is actually just getting started. Before we dive into the specific numbers that define each wealth tier, let me ask you something. When you picture a rich person, what comes to mind? Is it someone driving a Ferrari and wearing a Rolex, or is it someone who has the freedom to never worry about money again? Because here's the thing that's going to change how you think about wealth entirely. These two pictures of rich are completely different, and understanding that difference is the key to actually building real wealth instead of just looking like you have it. The truth is, most people have absolutely no idea what wealth actually looks like in America. They see someone with expensive toys and assume they're rich, while the actual millionaires are driving 10-year-old cars and living in modest homes. Meanwhile, that guy with the fancy car might be drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck just like everyone else, except his paychecks happen to be bigger. This confusion about what wealth really means is exactly why so many people never build any. They're chasing the wrong metrics, focusing on income instead of net worth, and spending money to impress people they don't even like. But once you understand the real numbers behind American wealth distribution, everything starts to make sense. Let's start with income because that's usually what people talk about first when they're discussing who's rich and who's not. The median household income in America now sits at $83,730 per year. That means half of all households earn more than this amount and half earn less. To be in the top 50%, you only need to make more than that $83,730 threshold. Congratulations, you're officially above average, which honestly isn't saying much when you consider that $68,000 barely covers basic expenses in most major cities these days. Moving up the ladder to crack the top 25% of income earners, you now need a household income of approximately $150,000 annually. Now, we're getting somewhere. This is where families start to have some breathing room, where they can actually save money instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck. The top 10% of income earners now start at a much higher threshold, $251,036 per year. This is where things get comfortable. These households can afford nice homes in good neighborhoods, take decent vacations, and actually put meaningful amounts of money away for retirement. But remember, this is household income, meaning two people earning $125K each puts you in this bracket. You could be earning $200,000 per year and still be broke if you're spending $250,000. Income and wealth are not the same thing, and this is where most people get completely confused about what it means to be rich. To crack the top 5% of income earners, the numbers jump substantially to $335,575 annually. This is serious money territory. These families can afford almost anything they want within reason, send their kids to private schools, and build substantial wealth if they're smart about it. And the top 1% of income earners, they now start at approximately $659,060 per year. This is where income becomes almost irrelevant to daily decision making. But here's a reality check. For individual earners, not households, that threshold is actually lower, sitting at around $450,000. This means Many top 1% households are actually power couples combining two high incomes. But again, and I cannot stress this enough, high income does not equal wealth. There are people earning 7 figures who are technically broke because they spend 8 figures. There are also people earning modest incomes who have built substantial wealth through consistent saving and smart investing over time. This is why net worth tells a much more accurate story about who's actually rich and who's just pretending to be. Net worth is simply what you own minus what you owe. Add up everything you have, subtract everything you owe, and what's left is your true financial position. The median net worth for American households has risen to about $193,000. Again, half of all households have more than this, and half have less. While this number has gone up, inflation means the purchasing power of that wealth isn't what it used to be. Think about that for a moment. Half of all households under age 35 have a net worth below $39,000. While that is an improvement from a few years ago, it is still barely the price of a reasonable new car. It is certainly not a down payment on a house in most cities. This is why understanding these numbers isn't just interesting, it's absolutely critical for your financial future. To reach the top 50% by net worth, you need more than that $193,000 median. Not exactly impressive, but it puts you ahead of half the country, which is something. The top 25% of households by net worth now starts at approximately $659,000. This is where families start to have real financial security. They own their homes, have substantial retirement savings, and could weather a significant financial storm without going broke. Breaking into the top 10% now requires a net worth of approximately $1.9 million. Now, we're talking about serious wealth. These households have multiple investment accounts, probably own investment real estate, and have built enough assets that money starts working for them instead of the other way around. The top 5% of households by net worth have at least $3.8 million. This is a massive jump from the top 10% tier. At this level, families have genuine wealth that can last for generations if managed properly. And the top 1%? To join this club, you now need a net worth of at least $11.6 million, with some estimates placing the threshold as high as $13.6 million. This is where money becomes almost abstract. The difference between the top 10% and the top 1% is now a gap of roughly $10 million. That is not just a step up, that is a completely different stratosphere of wealth. But here's what makes these numbers even more fascinating. The gap between each tier isn't linear. The difference between being middle class and upper middle class is substantial. But the difference between being upper middle class and truly wealthy is absolutely massive. And this is where most people's understanding of wealth completely breaks down. They think that moving from one tier to the next is just a matter of earning a little more money or saving a little more aggressively. But the reality is that each jump requires fundamentally different strategies, different mindsets, and often completely different approaches to how you think about money. Let's talk about what life actually looks like at each of these levels, because the numbers alone don't tell the whole story. When you're in that bottom 50% by net worth, you're essentially living in financial survival mode. Every unexpected expense is a potential disaster. Like your car breaks down, and suddenly you're choosing between fixing it or paying rent. You're not building wealth, you're just trying not to drown. Moving into the top 50% feels like finally being able to breathe underwater. You have some emergency savings, maybe a small retirement account, and you're not constantly stressed about every dollar, but you're still very much dependent on your paycheck. Lose your job, and you've got maybe a few months before things get scary. The top 25% is where financial stress starts to fade into the background. You own a home, probably have some investments, and you're actually building wealth instead of just treading water. This is what most people think of as middle-class success, even though it's actually above average by the numbers. But here's where things get really interesting. The jump from top 25% to top 10% isn't just about having more money. It's about having different kinds of money. These households aren't just saving more of their paychecks, they're generating income from their investments. Their money is starting to work for them, creating what we call passive income streams. At the top 10% level, families often have multiple investment accounts, maybe some rental properties, and they're thinking strategically about tax optimization. They're not just earning money from their jobs, they're earning money from their money. This is the fundamental shift that separates the comfortable from the wealthy. The top 5% takes this concept even further. Like, these households have built enough wealth that their investments are generating substantial income on their own. They might still work because they want to, but they're not entirely dependent on their paychecks for their lifestyle. Their wealth is becoming self-sustaining. And the top 1%, they've essentially escaped the traditional relationship between time and money. Their wealth generates more wealth automatically, often faster than they can spend it. They're not thinking about retirement, they're thinking about generational wealth transfer and philanthropic impact. Now, here's something that's going to mess with your head. The difference in lifestyle between someone making $50,000 and someone making $200,000 is obvious. Better house, nicer car, fancier vacations, but the difference in lifestyle between someone worth $2 million and someone worth $20 million, it's surprisingly subtle. Both families live in nice homes, drive luxury cars, take expensive vacations, and send their kids to private schools. The $20 million family might have a slightly bigger house or take slightly more exotic trips, but their day-to-day lives aren't dramatically different. The real difference isn't in what they buy, it's in their relationship with money itself. The $2 million family still thinks about money regularly. They check their investment accounts. They comparison shop for major purchases. They have a budget. Even if it's a generous one, the $20 million family has transcended most financial decision making. They don't think about money because they have enough that most purchases become irrelevant. This is why chasing lifestyle inflation is such a trap for most people. They think that earning more money will automatically make them happier. But what actually happens is their expenses just expand to match their income. The guy making 50,000 dreams about making 100,000, thinking it will solve all his problems. Then he makes 100,000 and realizes he needs 200,000. Then he makes 200,000 and decides he needs 500,000. Meanwhile, the person who understood wealth building principles early on might still be making that original 50,000, but they've been investing the difference between their income and their expenses for 20 years. Their net worth has grown to 7 figures while their lifestyle has remained modest. They've achieved actual wealth while everyone else has been chasing the appearance of wealth. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in understanding American wealth distribution: the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is an income level. Wealthy is a net worth level. You can be rich and broke, spending everything you earn on maintaining an expensive lifestyle. You can also be wealthy with a modest income, having built substantial assets over time through disciplined saving and investing. The truly wealthy understand that building net worth requires a completely different mindset than earning high income. It requires thinking long-term instead of short-term, prioritizing assets over liabilities, and understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt. Most importantly, it requires the discipline to live below your means, even when your means are substantial. Here's something else that might surprise you about American wealth distribution. The path to each tier isn't just about making more money. It's about making different financial decisions. The families in the top 10% aren't just earning more than everyone else, they're doing fundamentally different things with their money. They're maximizing their retirement contributions, they're investing in appreciating assets, they're minimizing their tax burden through legal strategies, and they're thinking strategically about debt. They understand that a mortgage on an appreciating asset is different from credit card debt on depreciating purchases. They know the difference between speculation and investment issues. The top 5% takes this even further. They're not just participating in traditional investment markets. They're creating their own investment opportunities. They're starting businesses, investing in real estate, and building multiple income streams. They understand that diversification isn't just about having different stocks. It's about having different types of assets entirely. And the top 1%, they're playing an entirely different game. They're not just building wealth, they're building wealth generating systems. They own businesses that produce income whether they work or not. They invest in opportunities that aren't available to regular investors. They structure their finances in ways that minimize taxes and maximize growth across generations. But here's what's really fascinating about these wealth tiers. The strategies that work at one level don't necessarily work at the next level. The budgeting and saving strategies that help someone move from the bottom 50% to the top 25% won't get them to the top 10%. And the investment strategies that work for the top 10% might not be available or appropriate for someone just starting their wealth building journey. This is why so much financial advice is confusing or contradictory. The advice that works for someone trying to get out of debt is completely different from the advice that works for someone trying to optimize their investment portfolio. The strategies that help someone save their first $100,000 are different from the strategies that help someone grow from 1 million to 10 million. Understanding where you currently stand and what the next tier requires is crucial for making progress. If you're in the bottom 50%, your focus should be on building emergency savings and eliminating high interest debt. If you're in the top 25%, you should be maximizing retirement contributions and exploring real estate investment. If you're in the top 10%, you should be thinking about tax optimization and alternative investments. The reality is that most people get stuck because they're using strategies designed for their current level instead of strategies designed for their target level. It's like trying to climb a mountain using the same techniques you'd use for hiking a hill. Sure, they're both about going upward, but the equipment, preparation, and mindset required are completely different. This is why you see so many people plateau at certain wealth levels. They master the strategies that got them there, but they never learn the strategies required to break through to the next tier. The person who's great at budgeting their way to $50,000 in savings might have no idea how to structure investments to reach $500,000. The entrepreneur who built a successful $1 million business might be clueless about wealth preservation strategies that the ultra wealthy take for granted. Here's something that should make you either excited or terrified depending on your current situation. The median American household will never reach the top 10% by net worth, not because they can't earn enough money, but because they never learn the wealth building strategies required to get there. They spend their entire careers focused on income optimization instead of net worth optimization. Think about it this way. If you take two people who both earn exactly $100,000 per year for their entire careers, one could retire with $3 million while the other retires with $300,000. Same income, completely different outcomes. The difference isn't luck or market timing, it's understanding how wealth actually works. The person who retires with $3 million understood that every dollar has the potential to become multiple dollars through compound growth. They maximized their retirement contributions, they invested in appreciating assets, and they avoided the lifestyle inflation trap that catches most high earners. The person who retires with $300,000 treated their income like a spending limit instead of a wealth building opportunity. But here's where this gets really interesting from a psychological perspective. The higher up the wealth ladder you climb, the more your relationship with money fundamentally changes. When you're in survival mode, money represents security. Every dollar saved is protection against potential disaster. When you reach the comfortable middle class level, money represents options. You can choose where to live, what to drive, where to vacation. But when you reach true wealth, money becomes almost abstract. It's not about what you can buy anymore. It's about what you can build, create, or influence. The ultra wealthy aren't thinking about purchasing power. They're thinking about impact and legacy. Money becomes a tool for achieving goals that extend far beyond personal consumption. This shift in perspective is actually one of the biggest obstacles to building wealth. Most people can't imagine having enough money that they'd stop caring about individual purchases, so they never develop the long-term thinking required to get there. They're so focused on what money can buy today that they never consider what money could become tomorrow. So there you have it. The real breakdown of what being rich actually means in America. Whether you're celebrating that 4-digit checking account or already planning your yacht purchase, now you know exactly where you stand and what it takes to climb higher. The choice is yours. Keep chasing the appearance of wealth or start building the real thing.